to the games that we got going on right now. We recently played Pokemon Legends Arceus, me and Phoenix, and he finished the game a little bit before me. And I felt like that was a fairly interesting place to kind of start off our little chit chat. So I guess just overall, what were your kind of open feelings for the game?
So I tell you, I feel kind of bad because I know we started talking about this game back when what were we playing? Oh, Nobody Saves the World, which we need to finish, by the way.
That's right, yeah.
And I know I was being really hard on the game. I hadn't played it yet, so I was kind of just talking out my butt about the whole thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, this game does not make a good first impression if you don't play it. Like it looks. I mean, it's no secret the game looks pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you get a chance to experience the gameplay, at least on the offset, it doesn't seem like it has a whole lot of redeeming qualities to it. So I know I was giving a hard time, being like, "Oh, there's no excuse for having bad graphics, blah 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 blah." And it's not that I don't feel that way anymore, but I tell you, once you play this game and actually give it a chance, it shocked me how much I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought at best I'd think of it like kind of a mediocre Pokemon franchise or
Mm-hmm.
entry, and I mean, I've been playing Pokemon since the original one, so. But I was really surprised just how much I actually enjoyed this. Like even like past Pokemon games I played, let's say played Sword and Shield and some of the more recent modern ones, Let's Go Pikachu, and like they were fun, I suppose, but nothing really grabbed on. At least not as far as my interest was concerned.
Ooh.
So this one really kind of hooked me in, and I mean I'm still hooked on it. I'm deep in the post game now, just trying to fill out the Pokedex,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been having a blast with it. I mean, there's definitely issues with the game, but I have enjoyed it far more than I thought. So I feel bad for ragging on it the way I did. That should be
Mm-hmm.
a lesson to myself not to speak without playing a game. So
Well,
I apologize for anybody who heard that.
Well, an interesting thing for me that I found while playing the game is it kind of, I think I mentioned it in my streams, but for me personally, I feel like it fulfilled kind of the dream that people like me had back in the GameCube era when people were pushing so much for like this open world, like, a different direction for some of the Pokemon games to go. And
Hmm.
I think that's why you probably know, but I love the games Pokemon Coliseum and Gale of Darkness XD. I feel like were like the first Pokemon games to really try something new, and they added some new elements. And I feel like Pokemon Arceus, in a way, kind of feels like that dream realized. I feel like this game doesn't fully realize it, but it takes it in a direction that I had been hoping, and that other people had been hoping Pokemon would eventually go into. Do you kind of agree with that or no?
Oh yeah, I think stings about this whole thing is, I mean, that's very much true. Like, I mean, since I was 10 playing Pokemon Red, I wanted the open world Pokemon experience where you're going out, collecting, capturing. I think the problem is I feel like this is the game we should have had, man, 10, 15 years ago. Like, I feel like even some of that older hardware back then may couldn't have done it to this scale, but could have done something pretty similar. So I guess it's what kind of hurts about it. I'm glad it's going this direction, but I feel like it should have done it so long ago. Because if they would have done it back in GameCube or Wii or heck even Wii U era,
Mm-hmm.
then I think where we'd be now would be so much further. And I think we'd really have like some amazing revolutionary Pokemon game that I feel like Arceus could have been. It's that so close yet so far kind of feeling, which makes me really excited to play it, but also pretty disappointed at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, it kind of reminds me of the whole, like, another series or game that I really love is Pokemon Snap. And for the longest time, people like me had wanted that next gen, that next step. And then especially when when the Wii U generation came around, it was like, oh, look, handheld, this thing's perfect for a camera type thing.
Hmm.
And I guess in a way for me, the whole Arceus comparison to older Pokemon games is just Pokemon Snap was something that I felt like could have been done well. And even to an extent, this new Pokemon Snap game, I feel like still to an extent really didn't even like live up to that dream. I feel like this game, as opposed to the other new Pokemon Snap game, does a much better job of kind of showing the direction, showing the way that I feel like I would like to see Pokemon go into.
Hmm. That's interesting. Because I really liked the new Pokemon Snap game. Maybe it's just because what my expectations were for that game and what I wanted out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't know. I don't think of anything else they really could have done in the new Pokemon Snap game that I don't know. I would have really been wanting beyond what they already did.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I do feel like, I mean, if we're talking about like, directions of the game, just already like Pokemon mainline in general, I feel like some of what Pokemon Snap did well, I would like to see interjected into Arceus. Like, I know you'll probably mention it. Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but probably one of the biggest downfalls or disappointing things about Arceus, in my opinion, is just the world building just feels really kind of flat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have Pokemon, all throughout it, but it's not that the Pokemon are living in the world; they're just kind of in the world.
Oh,
They don't interact
I
with
have that
the
in my notes.
yeah, but like, they're not like, living in a cave doing stuff or playing with each other or like there's just no interaction with the environment. And I feel like that's something that, especially the new Pokemon Snap did really, really well. It's like you're going through taking pictures of these Pokemon in their environment, doing things in their environment that were interesting and unique, and there were secrets to what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd like to see that level of detail to a certain extent brought over into something like Arceus. And I know there's a scaling issue there to a certain point because that's a lot of fine detail, and doing it on the scale of what Arceus is trying to do might be somewhat tricky. But I feel like there's a balance in there that Arceus didn't quite meet. Like, the open world definitely felt like an afterthought. Like, they really
Mm-hmm.
focused on that core, okay, this is how you capture and, explore for new Pokemon. But they didn't really think about, okay, we have this big open world, let's make this part interesting. It just kind of threw a bunch of Pokemon in it and kind of left it at that.
Well, it's interesting
So,
you mentioned that because I feel like that very much connects with one of the questions I had for you leading into this conversation. But probably one of my favorite questions that I had drawn up was, is it incumbent for the Pokemon Company to release a product with building upon things that you had just talked about, but also adding things like voice acting, visually being more, being more appealing, easier on the eyes, being more, having better graphical fidelity, and then, like you said, adding all of those open world elements and really building upon it better, doing a little bit more. Do you think with the Pokemon Company having the highest revenue generating IP in the world, do you think it's incumbent on them to do better, to really
um,
go into that direction?
So, I mean, I guess generally I'd say yes, but if we're being specific, so you mentioned voice acting. Voice acting, I honestly kind of lean on a no. Like, I don't feel like that's a necessity. I think the thing is, like, voice acting is such a mixed bag. Like,
Well,
whether it be in a high-profile AAA game or, something like a basic indie game.
well,
Like,
good for
you
that
can
is
run the
that.
game that
No, I was just real quick. Good for that is the fact that it does make, it still makes sense a little bit for me because it is a Japanese title,
it's
and
an
for the most
anime.
part, most JRPGs and anime, a lot of that stuff still is still heavily subtitled, and still like I don't know. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, no, that's fair. And like, I don't think that is a requirement. Like, don't get me wrong, if they could do some good voice acting, I think that could add to it. I don't think that's really a requirement for me. But at the same time, you think, this is a game that's based after a TV show. So, they definitely have resources to maybe pull voice actors from the show in there if you want to go that far. Not that, they follow the anime storyline very much, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like voice acting can be a real mixed bag. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. They could kind of like split the difference and do something kind of like what Breath of the Wild did, where there's moments of voice acting and then there's, still text dialogue to kind of fill in
Mm-hmm.
places here and there. But like even in that game, which that's, an extremely high profile game, the voice acting was, kind of mixed. There was some good stuff, some not so good stuff. So I don't know. For that particular point, I'd say no, they're not really required or there's a necessity for them to do that. As far as the graphics, though, yeah, I feel like they could have done more.
I
And I mean, I'll be the first to sympathize with developers. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I understand the time crunches they're under, the shifting requirements from management. The pandemic, of course, I'm sure put a lot of pressure under them. So all of that, I know, I'm not trying to come down hard on, oh, these Pokemon developers were lazy and should have done better. I don't think that's the case. But you do have, as you were saying, a IP that is what the highest grossing or highest generating revenue stream in the world for entertainment. Like, they've got money and resources to funnel into technology and high-end talent. Like, the level that they put out for this kind of visual quality is just really subpar for something for something of their caliber, or
Well,
that they should be of their caliber.
it also could be like an extremely what's the phrase? I mean, it could be an extremely double-edged sword situation where it's like, yeah, you have all this money, you have all of these things you can put into the game, but you also have such a rabid, diehard fan base that changing even like the most minute, smallest little aspect of it, it could send people into a frenzy. You know what I mean? So
Well, but when we're talking about graphical fidelity, what fan is going to be mad if they have a higher resolution or higher textured rock? Like, I don't think any fans are mad about
No,
that. So there's just
I
like
meant
the
more like
technical level they could have
I meant
put
more
more
like the
into.
voice acting and changing up game elements. I mean, yeah, obviously
Oh yeah,
everyone
and that I think is a different
visuals is
argument.
yeah.
Like if when we get to like gameplay, and we can talk about that in a few minutes, I definitely think that is a trickier, trickier water to navigate. But just from a pure graphical standpoint, they could do more. And part of that's just the art style. Like at least in Arceus, the art style is pretty underwhelming and I think kind of uninspired in parts. Like the world doesn't really have like any like landmarks to it. Like there's like one big tree in the first area that's your main landmark. There's like one temple and one other spot. Everything else is just bland nature. And I think that what bothers me about that is Pokemon clearly has a style. I mean, it's an anime with years and years, decades of animation style and
Hmm.
motifs they can pull from. Or even just look at Pokemon Snap. That game has a lot of style. Like that looks like Pokemon,
Yes,
and none of that translated over here. I don't want to say none of that, but very little of that.
that game visually
And
is leaps and bounds better than, than this one.
yeah. And to be fair, completely different games. I said that's an on-rail kind of deal. So the way it deals with, loading in assets and character models and AI, very, very different. So the scale of what Arceus is doing definitely would have to pull back on that some. But, I mean, we've seen games on
Yeah.
the Switch look as good, if not far better, than what we've seen
Well,
in Arceus.
that
Like,
just I'll let you finish, but that leads into one of my other questions for Phoenix, since he's going to rush right into it. Was are the Switch's capabilities slash architecture a fair scapegoat for the I guess lackluster nature of some of the graphical fidelity? So keep going.
I mean, so it's hard to say. I don't know all the technical aspects of it, and the Switch is by no means a powerful system by today's standards. But, I mean, I know you mentioned it when you were doing your little quick summary after beating the main campaign. Breath of the Wild was a
I
launch
was just
title
going to
coming out
bring that up when you. Yep.
2017.
Mm-hmm.
And at least just focusing on the world looked far better.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
to be fair, if we're thinking about it from like how many actual enemies and characters are on the map at any given point, Pokemon technically has a lot more things on the map. I mean, you've probably got several hundred Pokemon that are placed across a map at a given point with interactions and AI and spawn rates and all this other crazy stuff happening. So there's a lot of processing happening there. Breath of the Wild didn't have that. Like they would load in much smaller segments of enemies. You might have a handful to deal with at any given
Mm-hmm.
point. Um, so I mean, it's hard to gauge there. I don't know how they're doing their memory management or any of that, but I'll tell you, I feel like they could have optimized it more than they did to pull a little more something out of it. I know people like to also point to like Xenosaga or not. Yes, Xenosaga? No, I'm sorry. Xenoblade. Thinking of the wrong Xeno.
I know
Like
nothing about
Xenoblade on the
Xenoblade.
Switch.
Never played any of those games.
I haven't played them either. I've watched some gameplay of them, and they do look fantastic.
I'm
Now, I
sure.
don't know once again how they compare as far as like having a bunch of characters on the screen at the same time. That really does take a hit, man. It's a lot of processing power, but I don't know. Part of me feels like they could have done a little more here. It definitely feels like there was room for improvement that I think the Switch could have eked out a little more power from. Um, yeah, I don't know. They could have done a little more.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I guess another kind of like I've mentioned to you in the past, but like my favorite aspect of the game was the essentially the boss encounters. So I was just another interesting question I had for you is, do you feel like the addition of the alpha slash noble Pokemon and the aspect of you calming these frenzied nobles with bombs? Do you feel like that was a I don't know. Was it to you? Was it a pleasant replacement for a lot of the gym leader battles and Elite Fours from previous Pokemon games? Because for me, I really enjoyed all of the boss encounters. I felt like they were very fast twitchy. I really liked the additions of you kind of dodging all of these attacks from these giant, mega-sized Pokemon, and needling your kind of bombs and stuff like that, and then kind of interspersing, weakening the Pokemon and battling them. I felt like was a neat way to kind of have some battling going on in there, as opposed to like I don't know, the Elite Fours were normally simple. It was boom fight, next room boom fight. You know what I mean? So, what did you think about those kind of replacing some of that stuff?
Yeah, so you and me are going to differ quite a bit here.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't hate those battles by any means, but I don't know. Once I figured out the first one and like realized that you don't even have to fight them with your Pokemon, you can just spam them with bombs.
Yeah,
It's really just
I do
dodge,
agree with
bomb,
that.
dodge,
Yeah.
bomb. Like they became really easy, really quick. I mean, the only one that I think was somewhat engaging was the Electrode battle. That one was kind of intense.
I felt
Like
like that
every
one
other
was
battle,
easy.
really, that was the one I struggled with the
Avalugg,
most.
Avalugg for me was maybe the most engaging one. I felt like, but that was me.
I liked that one, I guess, in comparison to some, but I thought that one was pretty straightforward. The final boss I thought was the easiest. I did that one, I think, first shot.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Um,
I would definitely agree with that.
I don't know, like they were neat, and I mean, I understand why they didn't have gym battles in there, so they needed some kind of replacement. I'm not saying that something like this should go away, but it's definitely to me not a replacement for those. Um, and I will say this though, because you still haven't played any of the post game, right?
No, literally the last stream I did was I captured, Dialga and Palkia, and literally it just said, "Okay, now your Pokemon adventure begins," and then I
Okay.
saved and cut away, pretty much.
So the next segment, like you definitely need to do, because honestly, I feel like it's the real end of the story, and I think it
Okay.
kind of, honestly, is more climactic than even what the game ended as, and it felt more Elite Four-y, battle-y. I mean, not really, but it kind of had that high stakes moment to it, which I liked. I didn't really feel like I had that for any of the other battles with just the bombs and
What I
whatnot.
felt like what made the Elite Four, I don't know, going off on a little tangent, but I felt like what made the Elite Four super fun wasn't necessarily like how the mechanics of it, but it was just straight difficulty. Like that was what made those fun, is that it was like boom, boom, ridiculous battle, boom, dragons, you know what I mean?
Well, it gave you a chance to really test your
Your
Pokemon
metal,
skills.
yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, they were hard unless you really understood the mechanics of the game. You came with a good team that had the right move set and you knew how to counter them. Like, I think that's where a lot of people were really disappointed with Arceus is the battling. Not only was there not much of it, but the battling that's on offer here is far lesser than older games. Like, it's not nearly as fleshed out. It's not really in any kind of competitive standing right
No,
now. Like
no, no,
things
no,
are
no.
so underpowered. There's things missing. Like I do miss that, and I feel like that's something that I mean. Although I understand why they didn't put a lot of focus on it in this game. This game is very much about collecting the Pokemon and capturing them, less about battling them. That's still an important aspect, and I feel like they need to get that part of their community back and offer a boosted, battle system again. Which honestly, that I'm not too worried about that. I definitely think that's something that's easy for them to pull back from. Just look back at their old games and kind of pull those features back in, and I think they can definitely beef up the battle system. I
Well,
mean, I appreciate they tried the agile, strong thing. That was neat, but they can definitely, pull back some of the old competitive features.
I think all of this stems from when they got rid of Professor Oak.
Oh yeah,
They need to get Professor Oak back up in there because
man, I did not like the professor in Arceus. I hated that
oh,
stupid
he sucked. Him and his
beanie.
beanie and his mustache. He was not great. I do feel like is Pokemon the anime still happening? I'm sure that has to be.
Oh, it's still going. I don't know where they're at, but it's still chugging along.
All right, well, I guess I'll move on.
Oh, wow. I want to see if there's anything else I want to mention. I made some notes about it too.
Oh, let's go. Phoenix has got notes.
Well, and here's some of those questions, so I was gonna try to answer them. Oh, so you mentioned I don't know if you mentioned this, but I kind of want to bring
Whose
it up.
show is
So
this? Is this your show? I think it's my
maybe
show.
it should be. Hey, I had to help you get OBS set up.
No
So
one heard
how?
that. I'm not. I'm gonna bleep that out.
So you mentioned, or you asked me about, the those battles replacing the gym leaders, which that's whatever. How did you feel about like the research levels kind of taking the place of badges?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I've mentioned to you, I felt like for some reason, maybe it's because you were more adventurous than I, and you were actually going out and doing more things in between the story parts that were making you level gated. Like I felt like I was hitting more of those level gates than maybe you were, because you said it wasn't a problem, but there was literally one or two streams I had where I had to go maybe an hour and a half worth of just kind of grinding out battles and kind of doing all that stuff. I don't know. I guess it's still pretty fun. I mean, for me, that kind of stuff still feels a little more tedious. Like
Hmm.
it's been a long time since I've actually played some of these Pokemon games and actually like I'll finish all of the main stories and all that stuff. But for a lot of these games, the more modern recent games, I feel like I kind of fall off the games once I kind of do all of that stuff. I feel like the last time I really went out and maybe completed a Pokedex might have been Ruby and Sapphire. So like that was when I was like super young. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I guess some of it was fun. I mean, I don't know. I think for me, what I appreciated is just kind of the speed at which all of that stuff happens. Like, it definitely felt like a step up. Like, the biggest step up I feel like this game introduced and, and adding to the Pokemon game gameplay is I loved how expedited and quick it is to get in and out of battles. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just running in grass. Oh, Pokemon shows up. Cutscene. Long freaking battle. Cutscene away after you win or lose. You know what I mean? It's like these battles feel so much expedited where it's just like it really doesn't cut away. Like it's all like pretty free flowing and natural where it's like, oh, there's a Pokemon, camera shifts over, bam, you start throwing, battles. It's I don't know, I really appreciated how kind of just quick and yeah, that's probably my favorite gameplay like improvement for the Pokemon games. So much so that like in the future, if other Pokemon games slow things back down, which it will, this game probably is more along the lines of like a Pokemon Snap, where it's like this is a once in every 5 to 10 year game for the most part every year that we're going to get re-releases or. Although, how many more re-releases could there be? Haven't they already covered most of the games?
They'd have to get into pretty modern generations to re-release, but I don't know. I'm hoping because this is technically a mainline game, so we'll see. I'm hoping that the gameplay style really bleeds over. But to your point about the speed of it, I think that's really helped me not feel overly like tedious or tired for doing all the Pokedex.
That definitely helps. Oh yeah, because if it was as slow as the previous games, I probably would have dropped out.
See, I'm kind of in between. I really like the research levels. I don't know if I would say they should be like a gym badge replacement, but I don't know. It really incentivized me to go through and play with Pokemon that I never would play for, look for them in places I'd never look for them. Like I've been enjoying spending this extra time just checking off all these boxes. Maybe that's just my personality and what I like, and I can definitely understand how for some that would be tedious. So I don't think that should ever be something that is like overly level gating to anybody or be required by any means, but I'd like to see that stay in some fashion. Like gym badges should probably come back because I think at a core Pokemon there's a competitive aspect. I think those badges kind of feed into that, but maybe badges can start serving a different kind of role instead of just being like you have to have this badge to go here. Maybe like having the badge unlocks, I don't know, a special move. I don't know, which I guess kind of does anyway. I don't know, something else that incentivizes you getting the gym badges, different than incentivizing you from getting research levels.
Didn't in the original,
kind of coexist.
In the classic Pokemon games, the gym badges really
they let you use HMs.
I was just gonna say it helped you movement. It helped you getting around the levels and all that sort of stuff, which was smart. That was really smart back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of answers another one of my questions, which was talking about the overall game direction and what you want future Pokemon games to shape themselves as. And you already mentioned what we've already kind of talked about, what we'd like to be carried over. I guess I'll round things out. Or did you have any other questions or anything?
I don't think anything in particular. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions you sent me.
There's only one major question that I kind of have for you. That's more of a fun one.
What about the side missions?
Oh yeah, that one I did forget about that one. Honestly, I feel like I feel like you did more adventuring than I did. I didn't do as many. There was one in particular on my last stream I actually really enjoyed, and that was this guy who had a sphere, and it would keep rolling down a hill.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you had to keep chasing this sphere, and eventually you would catch up to it or something. It was
basic, but it was silly.
Yeah, and then as you were trying to get to this field, there's like all of these crazy. Oh, I forgot the name of the Pokemon. What were the red-eyed alpha? There's like all these alphas in the way, and I don't know. I felt like that was kind of fun and just kind of feels kind of cute. It's cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the side missions were nothing to write home about. There were a couple I thought were kind of interesting. Do you remember? Did you do the one where the Drifloon was like stealing the kid?
I did not. I didn't touch a lot of those things. That's going to be something I probably do on the next stream.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting because one that's like part of the Pokedex is like kids would disappear because Drifloons would. I guess they weren't kidnapping them, but like they would hold on to the Drifloons and they just float away. It was kind of messed up.
That's
and there's a whole side quest where this kid is like disappearing at night and they're not sure why. And they're
Oh,
like, oh, we saw him hanging out by the beach with the Drifloon. And then you go out to search for him, and the Drifloon's got his little tentacles wrapped around the kid. He's like, help!
yikes.
It was kind of horrifying, but
That kind of reminds me of. I mean, you're more of a Zelda guy than I am, but what's that? There's always like that one demon creature that everyone thinks is evil in the towns, but
yeah.
like it ends up being just kids just go to him because he's friendly.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But it was kind of dark too, and there were a couple of mentions of kind of some dark stuff in this game. Like it wasn't a side mission, but what was it? They were talking about how the first survey team who went out to deal with Cleaver or whatever got like mauled or something. Like,
I remember hearing that. And there's also
Um,
like an aspect of like when you first start the game and you enter the town, it definitely feels like there's like a hint of like I don't want to say racism, but there's a hint of like
they're afraid of like outsiders and stuff.
yes,
And
exactly. It's very like we don't trust you. You know who are you?
yeah,
You
they're all
know,
about their plans and stuff. Which back then, I guess I don't know.
not quite
I'm not real.
racist, but it's
Yeah, I think that's the wrong term.
yeah,
But
it's
I don't like nationalist or something like
yes,
that.
yes, exactly. Maybe
But yeah, I mean,
sectionalist or like
yeah, I mean, this is still very much, a kid game with like overall tones, but there was some dark stuff in there. The post game stuff gets a little weird, so definitely recommend it. So I don't know. I mean, I like the side quests well enough. There were nothing mind blowing, but there were fun, cute
there
ones.
was like a main there was like a main side quest I didn't do. I remember Professor Laventon says something about go to the water and there's a Pokemon out there.
Oh
Something,
yeah.
some sort of major Pokemon. I went out there and I never saw it. I'm guessing
So
what there is there's a cave in front of the volcano. I'm guessing in that cave there's like a major Pokemon battle or something that happens there. But
kind of. So this one, it's interesting the way they did it. I had to look it up because basically you had to have played, was it Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl?
oh,
I think the name of the mission is like The Legend of the Sea or something like that. And there's actually nothing in Arceus that tells you how to do that mission. But if
hmm
you go to the library in Brilliant Diamond, there's a book called The Legend of the Sea, and it tells you to take 3 Pokemon to an archway and it unlocks a cave. So if you didn't know that from the other game, you couldn't figure it out in this game.
huh.
So you had to have like is it Overquill and I don't know the little Weasel. Oh, it was like 3 Pokemon you had to bring with you, and then it
Hmm.
opened up and you were able to get into a little cave that had a couple of mythic
I
Pokemon
mean
in it.
that would make sense because I know this game acts as like a time-based
Precursor.
precursor to
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that's a neat idea to kind of pull from the other game. It's definitely one of those things that if you didn't know about that, though, you're going to be scratching your head. So I don't know if there's a way they could have kind of, alluded to that a little more. But I don't know. They definitely tried some interesting things with the side missions. So, I appreciated them.
Fair enough. I mean, like I said, I don't really answer too much of the even question I made out for you, but because I didn't really get to play much. I mean, I kind of mainly jetted through a lot of the story. I did some side missions here or there, but for the most part, I may have done maybe 15 to 20 side missions when there's like 60, 70. I think there's a lot more than that actually.
Yeah, they get in the 90s, and I've done pretty much all of them. So I've really enjoyed this game. Like, I definitely have plenty of critiques, but I want to see the core of what this game is doing moving forward. Like,
Hmm.
fix the graphics, make the world feel more lived in, or, however they need to go about making the world more engaging. I think, too, they don't even have to have an open world. Like, not that they have an open world right now. I mean, I think the scope is nice, but they could pull it down if it would help them, pull some more performance out of the system. Like go like a Twilight Princess style game where you have like a big hub in the middle, like your Hyrule Field kind of thing.
Hmm.
That could be the big area, and there's a bunch of little branching areas that are smaller in scope but a lot more detailed, more interesting. So I don't know. I definitely there's a lot they could do with this game. I definitely wanted to see them take the core of this and move forward. I don't want to go back to the hidden wild
Yeah.
battles in the grass anymore.
That's super interesting because what I think the game is missing is battle royale, microtransactions, and NFTs.
Oh yeah.
I just ticked off like all
Well,
of the
when
Pokemon
Ubisoft,
fan base.
takes over the next Pokemon game, then we'll be good to go. I mean, we already got Mario Rabbids. Now we just need Pikachu Rabbids, and we're going that direction.
Yeah, I know most of the Pokemon fan base just dropped with heart attacks because of.
All one of them that's watching the stream right
We'll
now.
only give you your first Pokemon. Every other Pokemon is $2.99. All right, so I guess My final question. I mean, I feel like shoot, I was planning these videos to be like 30 minutes, and we've spent 20 on Pokemon alone.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had a lot to say about Pokemon.
No, I feel like I honestly felt like out of the 4 topics, Pokemon was the one we would spend the most time on. So that's good. I guess my final kind of question is, where does Pokemon Legends Arceus rank with you in your favorite Pokemon games?
Oof.
You don't have to rank them all, but just a general.
Yeah, I couldn't. To be fair, there's a bunch I haven't played. I think after like the first couple of generations, like I started like skipping every other generation. So
I'm same way.
One is still my favorite, and that's going to be nostalgia, I think, more than anything else. Like I was the 10-year-old when Pokemon was released, and I was in the middle of Pokemon fever. So, Pokemon Red forever and always will be my number one.
I agree.
Yellow is right up there with it. And I'm not sure saying that's the best game. Like I'm sure it is extremely dated by all modern standards, but what can I say? Nostalgia is a crazy drug. My second's probably Generation 3. That's Ruby Sapphire, right?
Yes. Yeah, I love that one.
Gen 2 just felt too much like it didn't do enough for me. It was like, okay, that's kind of neat. But Gen 3, I mean, really, I think added a lot to it.
I think Gen 2, all it added was like a day and night cycle, if I remember correctly. It was like the only major thing it had.
Yeah, 3 I feel like added a lot. I feel like that's when breeding came in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. 3 also had the judging thing. That was so much fun to do.
Yeah. There's just a lot in that game. And I'll be honest, I mean, as I haven't played a lot of the games. I've all of the DS ones I missed. I still haven't played Black and White.
Same.
I mean, I've tried a few times, but I get like 5 hours in, I just drop off.
I feel like me and you have played probably almost all the same Pokemon games.
Yeah. I think the problem is like just about every game I've played since 3 doesn't feel like it really adds enough to make it feel like that much better than even just Gen 3. I mean, so graphically they're maybe a little better. There's a few more features, but the core of the game up to that is just like the same.
I think I've heard Black and White has like a really good story, but that's about
I'm trying
it.
to get into it. Yeah, I don't know, but the gameplay is the same. So nothing about that really hooked me. And then Sword and Shield really kind of took me off. I think at that point I was just like, yeah, they're never changing this game.
I mentioned that in my stream. Sword and Shield for me was like
that was a low point.
I mean, the low point for me was Sun and Moon, but
yeah, I didn't play Sun and Moon.
Sun and Moon.
But anyways. This would probably rank third. Gen 1, Gen 2, and then this. This is probably the first game that's felt different since then. I don't know if do you watch Dunkey at all? Video game Dunkey?
Yeah, I watched his Arceus review, actually. It was like 4 minutes long.
I thought it was really funny, but so fair that he's like, yeah, Arceus is their second game.
It basically is, yeah.
It kind of
That's
is.
so funny you bring that up.
Even like Ruby Sapphire, I mean, at its core, it's still the same stuff. I mean, it's added some features, but the game is still the same game. Arceus is the first time they've done something like really different, and I don't know. I want to see this continue forward. All the other games just kind of fall underneath this somewhere in some kind of mixed bag. But yeah, 1, 3, and Arceus.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were to, I mean, mine would almost be exactly the same. I mean, part of me definitely wants to say Gen 1 is my favorite, but I think in terms of, it's me making an argument, but like I think Gen 3 is probably a better overall game than the original, but 1 for nostalgia purposes I'll have it at 1. 1 is 1. But
that's fair.
I think Ruby and Sapphire, if you were to compare what you can do in the game, all of the elements for it, I think it's a much better game, probably. But yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
I would say 1, then 3, and then I would get into the argument of whether 2 or Arceus. Or actually, I'm forgetting. I would put Coliseum at 3. I don't know why I'm forgetting. And I also forgot Pokemon Snap. You know how much I love Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, I mean, if you're bringing to the side ones, that changes. How we were sticking this kind of, main line.
But is this a main? Oh, I guess this is.
This is technically a mainline game.
Okay,
it's officially a mainline.
So we'll keep Pokemon Snap out, but I mean, I would say this closely resembles something like Coliseum or Gale of Darkness. I would think maybe.
I disagree with that.
Really?
Well, think about the core of those games. Like they were. I mean, they had some. They were more narrative focused, I suppose, in battling, but very little capturing and stuff. Like, wasn't I haven't played them in forever, but wasn't that we could capture them? I know Gale of Darkness, you had to like cleanse the Pokemon. And
it was all about cleansing
in a battle,
and you could only capture certain Pokemon that were evil or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't really like that. Coliseum, I vaguely remember, but it was kind of the same like style of game in a way.
What about Pokemon Go? That's probably not a.
I enjoyed Go for what it was. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with Go. Like, I mean, it revolutionized the world for what, 3 months?
Yeah, for 3 weeks.
And it's still going, man.
But
still play it.
But yeah, for me, I guess excluding all those other games, I would say for mainline Pokemon games, then I would say 1, then 3. It would be tough though. Again, between 2 and then Arceus. Maybe I'll throw Arceus in there. 2 is too similar to 1, so I would say 1, 3 Arceus, and then 2. I feel like our lists are pretty similar. Now, I'm sure most people probably feel that way, although
it's going to come down to nostalgia, I think, for just about everybody.
And then maybe like X and Y would come in right after Arceus. I really liked X and Y.
I liked it fine, but it's in the same boat. Like, it didn't feel all that amazing compared to even advancements from Ruby Sapphire. Like, I think it depends. What game did you start out playing Pokemon with? I know for a lot of people, Diamond and Pearl is their favorite. And I mean, from what I know about the games and if the correlation to Arceus is anything to go by, like, they seem like pretty solid titles. But I don't know. From pretty much Gen 1 through, like, I don't even know what gen we're at, the core of the games have been so much the same for so long that just the fact that Arceus is so different really just gives it a step up. Now, maybe I'll feel differently in a few years if it doesn't, I don't know, age so well with some different advancements, but I like it for what it is, for sure.
Fair enough. All right.